Clint Eastwood navigates a landscape of American grit through a meticulously constructed mirage of silence and systemic control. The Pacific Ocean serves as the ultimate baptism for a man who would later dismantle the very legends that birthed him. This cinematic journey from the shark-infested waters of Point Reyes to the halls of government in Carmel reveals a fundamental architecture of survival. Is the man with no name a hero, or a carefully engineered byproduct of the Great Depression's economic collapse? Does the silhouette of the vigilante hide a deeper libertarian anomaly? The roots of the Eastwood persona are buried in the dust-choked roads of the 1930s, far from the polished marble of Hollywood. Born in 1930, Clint Eastwood Jr. entered a world where the American dream had devolved into a systemic failure. The Great Depression was the zero point, an era defined by a restless geography as his family migrated across the West Coast in a desperate search for stability. This nomadic childhood created a psychological detachment, an armor of silence that would eventually define his performance style. As explained by Richard Schickel in his definitive biography, Clint Eastwood, A Biography, this period was a catalyst for a restless West Coast adolescent who was shaped by the metallic reliability of cars and the syncopated rhythms of jazz. The frequent changes in schools and homes instilled a fundamental distrust of permanent structures. In these formative years, the actor was an anomaly, a tall, quiet boy who found more solace in mechanical tasks than in social integration. The architecture of his character was built on the premise that survival requires a lack of sentimentality. The transition from a frustrated young man facing years of rejection to a television star was not a stroke of luck, but a result of a disciplined, rhythmic approach to the work. His time as a swimming instructor and lifeguard at Fort Ord provided the physical foundation for the stiff lip and smarmy snarl that would later captivate international audiences. However, the conventional white hat roles of his early career, such as Rowdy Yates in Rawhide, felt like a cage. He viewed these characters as cloddish and one-dimensional, a mirage of morality that lacked the nuance of real-world struggle. Consequently, the decision to head to Europe for a spaghetti western was not just a career pivot, but an escape from the boredom of American television's outdated archetypes. This early era of instability serves as the foundation for everything that followed. The restlessness of the 1930s migrant became the nomadic spirit of the man with no name. Before the world saw the icon, the boy saw the fragility of the American system. But what happens when that fragile system literally drops a man into the abyss? The moment that truly bifurcated the subject's life occurred on September 30th, 1951, in the thick fog off the Point Reyes Peninsula. While returning from a prearranged tryst in Seattle, then Corporal Eastwood hitched a ride on a Douglas AD-1 Sky Raider, a torpedo bomber of World War II vintage. It was a jinx flight, where everything that could fail did fail. The rear door wouldn't stay closed, the oxygen system proved inoperable, and the navigation and communication systems vanished into the gray haze. The turning point arrived when the plane ran out of fuel, forcing the pilot, Lieutenant Francis Anderson, to ditch into the freezing, shark-infested waters of the Pacific. This was not a movie set. It was a stark collision with mortality. Eastwood and the pilot inflated life rafts and began a 2 to 4 mile swim through a treacherous surf. The bioluminescent water, shimmering with a ghostly light, caused hallucinations as the subject fought against a deadly undertow that nearly dragged him under. He focused on the lights of the shore, a survival mechanism he would later translate into a philosophy of maintaining momentum in all aspects of life. When he finally crawled onto the beach at Kehoe Ranch, dazed and in a state of shock, he had been transformed. This encounter with the abyss stripped away the self-agonizing doubt common in his profession. Later, when directing films like Sully, he would draw directly from this experience, understanding that in a crisis, the only thing that matters is the better thought process and the discipline to keep moving.
The crash was the catalyst that hardened his resolve, ensuring that he would never again be a passive passenger in his own career. This survival story is the root cause of the stony Eastwood mask. He learned that in the face of systemic collapse, whether of a plane or a studio, the individual must become an architecture of one. Consequently, his transition to the director's chair was not just a creative choice, but a defensive maneuver to ensure he was always the one at the controls. How did this need for control redefine the very idea of the Hollywood director? The credibility of the subject as a world-class creator is anchored in his mastery of the auteur theory. As explained by Andrew Sarris in his landmark essay, Notes on the Auteur Theory in 1962, this phenomenon is known as the distinguishable personality of the director, where a creator's signature is visible across their entire body of work. While early critics dismissed him as a mere mask for Sergio Leone, Eastwood was actually developing a sophisticated visual language that relied on the economy of gesture. He understood that the less a character says, the more they grow in the imagination of the audience. This minimalist philosophy was a reaction against the conventional white hat tropes he had endured in television. By bringing his own props, the Cobra-handled Colt, the black jeans, and the trademark cigars, he was already acting as an auteur before he ever held a megaphone. He rebranded the solitary hero into a symbol of moral ambiguity, a Warhol cutout that reflected the disillusionment of a post-Vietnam America. The establishment of Malpaso Productions in 1967 was the structural anchor of this independence. Owning his own company allowed him to bypass the micromanagement of studios, providing him with ownership leverage that few actors ever achieve. He could now choose projects like Play Misty for Me, which subverted his tough guy image by portraying a helpless male at the mercy of a predatory force. This was a radical departure from the Gary Cooper archetype. While Cooper affirmed traditional values, the Eastwood auteur sought to deconstruct them. This architecture of control allowed him to build a machine that can keep producing and storing wealth over time. His directorial style, fast, efficient, and often finishing under budget, became a systemic anomaly in a town known for excess. He thrived when he could avoid confrontation and micromanagement, a philosophy he called maintaining momentum. But as he gained power, his characters began to reflect a more dangerous paradox. Was he a protector of the people, or a fascist fantasy in a tailored suit? The deepest layer of the Eastwood enigma is the paradox of the right-wing fantasy. In 1971, Dirty Harry introduced Inspector Harry Callahan, a character who became a lightning rod for cultural anxieties about rising crime and police bureaucracy. While critics like Pauline Kael branded the film deeply immoral and a paean to fascist medievalism, audiences saw a hero who finally put punks out of commission. Miranda rights be damned. The paradox lies in the fact that this emblem of the no-nonsense approach to justice was created by a man who identifies as a liberal libertarian. Eastwood's libertarianism is defined by a simple, piercing mantra: leave everybody alone. He has consistently expressed disapproval of America's wars in Korea, Vietnam, and Iraq, viewing them as immoral interventions by a global policeman. Yet his most iconic characters, Dirty Harry and Chris Kyle in American Sniper, are often co-opted as Republican platforms. This anomaly suggests a fundamental disconnect between the subject's private values and the public's perception of his hegemony of violence. The reality is that Dirty Harry was a political Rorschach test. He wasn't a hero of the state, but a man with programmatic contempt for authority. Like the actor himself, Callahan was an individualist operating within a broken system. The flow of power in his films often suggests that when the state fails, the individual must step in, a theme that resonates with both the frustrated conservative and the cynical libertarian. Consequently, the fascist label missed the mark. Eastwood wasn't celebrating the police. He was celebrating the outsider who makes the police look incompetent. This paradox extended to the political arena. Ronald Reagan famously co-opted the phrase, "Go ahead, make my day," to threaten tax increases, demonstrating how a cinematic line could become a systemic tool of the presidency. Yet Eastwood himself was criticizing the secret Oval Office tape recording scheme of Richard Nixon. This duality, a man who projects the ultimate authority figure while deeply distrusting authority, is the core of his longevity. But what happens when the man of silence decides to actually hold office? To understand the longevity of the subject, one must follow the flow of money.
In 1967, Eastwood founded Malpaso Productions using the profits from the Dollars Trilogy. The name itself, meaning bad step, was an ironic jab at his advisors' belief that his career was over. However, Malpaso became a fortress of creative and financial independence, allowing him to work like an owner rather than just an employee.
Malpaso's business model is a masterclass in systemic efficiency. Unlike major studios with bloated budgets and micromanaging executives, Eastwood's production house is headquartered in a modest 5-room building on the Warner Bros. Lot. He is known for very tight shooting schedules, often finishing films ahead of schedule and under budget. For Eastwood, the film revolves around the script and characters, not directors' pretensions or superstars' egos. This discipline is what he considers real power, the ability to depend on oneself while the rest of the industry fluctuates in insanity.
The financial architecture he built has allowed him to accumulate a net worth of approximately $375 million. By negotiating back-end participation and profit sharing, he ensured that his films would keep paying out through distribution and library value over decades. He didn't just build a career, he built a machine that can keep producing and storing wealth. This self-respect and discipline are the fundamentals that allowed him to outlast almost every one of his contemporaries.
This lean, economical craftsmanship is not just about money. It's a moral stance against the insanity of Hollywood excess. He views high-budget spectacles like Paint Your Wagon, which cost $22 million in 1969, as irrational. By controlling the architecture of production, he ensured that he would never be a victim of studio anarchy. But how does this obsession with control translate when the scale shifts from a film set to a city?
In 1986, the subject's narrative took a surreal turn into the halls of local government. Frustrated by the red tape and pedantic laws that prevented him from building an office on his own property, Eastwood decided to run for mayor of Carmel-by-the-Sea. The town, a 1-square-mile enclave of storybook charm, had become a landscape of unusual restrictions. No street addresses, no parking meters, and most famously, a ban on outdoor ice cream cones. Running on a platform of leaving everybody alone, Eastwood defeated the incumbent with a staggering 2,166 votes to 799. His first act as mayor was to fire the planning board that had vetoed the ice cream prohibition repeal. This was the liberal libertarian in action, removing a bah humbug law that had earned Carmel the nickname Scrooge City. He used his 2-year term to install public toilets, expand the local library, and protect the Mission Ranch from being bulldozed by condo developers. The mayoralty was not a play for power, but a defense of property rights. He viewed the office as a public servant role, noting that the fact that I didn't need it made me think I could do more. He penned a column in the local paper, the Carmel Pinecone, where he wasn't afraid to call out fellow officials as spoiled children. This period demonstrated the reality behind the man with no name mask. He was a pragmatic, innovative businessman who used his celebrity to bypass bureaucratic gridlock. His tenure left an indelible mark on Carmel, turning a tiny village into a big player on the world stage. But the shadow of the vigilante followed him even there. Critics wondered if his hands-on approach was just another form of the hegemony he portrayed on screen. Ultimately, he opted not to run for a second term, choosing instead to return to the medium where he could fully deconstruct the myths of his own making. If Dirty Harry was the assertion of the vigilante, the 1992 film Unforgiven was its masterful deconstruction. This film serves as the fundamental layer of the Eastwood legacy, a revisionist Western that strips away the romantic veneer of the frontier. In Unforgiven, Eastwood plays William Money, an aged Kansas pig farmer and former killer who has outlived his own prime. The film is a brutal and unflinching portrayal of violence, where guns are clumsy and death is unglamorous. Money is no longer the young, mysterious icon. He is a man who ineptly wallows in the mud and can't even hit a target with a pistol. The violence is situated in a mundane truth, where a cowboy is gunned down while defenseless on the toilet. As explained by Clay Motley in his academic analysis, the film uses this unglamorous portrayal to reassess our perception of the American West and the legend-making that would glamorize or valorize violence. Unforgiven provides no easy answers or clear-cut heroes. It questions how history is so often exaggerated by writers like D. Beauchamp, who transform mundane acts of brutality into mythic pulp novels. The film's climactic reclamation of Money's manhood is not a triumphant moment, but a tragic one. He reverts to the manhood that no one in his right mind would want. This was the subject's way of forcing the audience to apologize for the glorification they had placed on his earlier characters. This film won 4 Academy Awards, cementing the actor-director as a singular triumphant figure in American cinema. It was his biggest statement on the bloody past of the frontier myth. By deconstructing his own image, he proved that he was more than a mask. He was a critic of the very architecture of violence that had made him famous. But as the sun sets on a career spanning 7 decades, what is the systemic lesson he leaves behind? The final synthesis of the Eastwood narrative is the systemic anomaly of his longevity. He has outlasted every trend, from the spaghetti western to the new Hollywood of the 70s, by maintaining a live and let live attitude and a refusal to tiptoe around feelings. His career is built on grit, hard work, and determination, but it is anchored by a deep-seated respect for his own efforts. He famously noted that self-respect leads to self-discipline, and that when you have both, that's real power. This power is reflected in his diverse portfolio: a 15,000 square foot ranch in Carmel, an oceanfront property in Maui, and a 1,067-acre ranch in Bernie. He didn't just earn like an actor, he earned like an owner. His influence extends to modern icons like Wolverine, as his exploration of moral complexities set the tone for what modern heroes should embody. He has become an American icon, not by following the rules, but by building his own architecture of survival.
Ultimately, the subject's life is a testament to the leave everybody alone definition of freedom. He remains a liberal libertarian who believes in fiscal responsibility and government staying out of the individual's way. From the bioluminescent hallucinations of a plane crash to the deconstructed violence of the West, he has navigated the American mirage with a piercing authoritative clarity. The flow of money, power, and history all lead back to one man in a 5-room office, finishing his films early and under budget.
Does the cycle of violence ever truly stop? Probably not, as the subject himself wondered after observing the wars of his lifetime. But as long as there is a camera and a stiff lip, the myth of the individual will endure. Eastwood has spent 90 years proving that the only way to survive the shark-infested waters of life is to keep your eyes on the shore and maintain your own momentum. In a world of loud, attention-seeking power, his quiet and lasting strength is the ultimate anomaly. What remains when the credits roll and the lights in the theater come up? Only the haunting silhouette of a man who looked into the abyss, swam to shore, and then bought the beach. If history is indeed a collection of rumors, then Clint Eastwood is the only man who has successfully written his own legend in his own words. Does the man with no name finally have one? Or is the mask the only thing we will ever truly know? The journey from a freezing Pacific abyss to the peak of the global cinematic hegemony is not merely a story of fame, it is a case study in the architecture of the self. Eastwood's life reveals a fundamental truth that in a world of systemic noise, silence is the ultimate leverage. He dismantled the conventional white hat to reveal a more complex, morally ambiguous reality. Whether he was firing a planning board to save an ice cream cone or stripping the glamour from a gunfight, he operated as an anomaly within the very industry that tried to typecast him. He did not just inhabit the American dream, he engineered its blueprints to ensure he was never a passenger in a failing craft again. We are left with a man who has outlived his contemporaries and his critics by simply refusing to tiptoe around the feelings of a changing world. His legacy is not just a collection of films, but a machine that continues to produce wealth and influence long after the dust of the frontier has settled. If identities are truly just collections of rumors, as he once suggested, then Eastwood has become the most disciplined rumor in history. He looked into the shark-infested waters of the 1950s and learned that survival requires a lack of sentimentality. As the final frame fades to black, we must confront the haunting reality. We didn't just watch the man with no name. We watched a man who built a name so powerful it became its own law. In the end, does the vigilante's mask hide a hero, or a man who simply realized that the only way to be free is to leave everybody and everything behind?